There was once a book so sacred, so filled with visions of heaven, that the earliest believers treated it as prophecy. And yet this book was buried for centuries. Not because it was false, but because it was too true, too dangerous. Why would religious leaders fear its words? Why did the West erase it from their canon while Ethiopia guarded it as a treasure? What secrets could be so powerful that kings and priests agreed the people must never know? Tonight we open the forbidden pages of Enoch, the man who never tasted death, the prophet who walked with God, the scribe who saw the throne of heaven and the Son of Man before Jesus ever walked the earth. His visions were not myths, they were revelations. Revelations that threaten the powers of both religion and empire. This is not just history. This is a theological investigation, an uncovering of the truths that rulers tried to bury, the secrets they hoped would remain in the shadows. But today the silence is broken. Today we open the banned book, and it all begins with one man's seventh from Adam. Chapter 1. Enoch, the man who walked with God. When you open the genealogies of Genesis, the long lists of names often feel like a graveyard of forgotten lives. Adam lived and he died. Seth lived and he died. Enosh lived and he died. The rhythm is relentless, a drumbeat of mortality echoing through human history. But then something astonishing breaks the pattern. The text suddenly pauses, almost as if heaven itself interrupts the dirge of death. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. This is no ordinary line. It is a rupture in the story of mankind. Everyone else dies, but Enoch does not. He does not fade into the soil as Adam did, nor return to the dust like his fathers. Instead, he vanishes into the mystery of God's presence. Enoch was the seventh generation from Adam, the number 7 itself carrying a weight of completion of divine design. He was not the firstborn, not the builder of cities like Cain's line, not a warrior or a king. And yet the scriptures elevate his name in a way that seems to whisper, "Here is a man set apart." The great-grandfather of Noah, the bridge between the first world of innocence and the coming flood of judgment. While death reigned over every son of Adam, Enoch escapes. The Bible leaves us no tombstone, no epitaph, no he died. Instead it says God took him. But taken where, taken why? Ancient Jewish tradition calls Enoch the righteous scribe, the secretary of heaven. He was believed to be entrusted with visions no other man had seen. Not only did he walk with God in daily intimacy, but he recorded the decrees of heaven like a court stenographer of the divine throne. Imagine it, a mortal man invited into the heavenly council chamber, pen in hand, hearing the whispers of angels and the proclamations of God. This is why Enoch is not remembered merely as a patriarch, but as a prophet, as the first human being to step beyond the veil. He is a witness of eternity. In the book of Jude, a small letter hidden near the end of the New Testament, the words of Enoch resurface after centuries of silence. Jude writes, Enoch too from Adam prophesied about these men. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all. A New Testament author quotes Enoch as prophecy, as if his words still thunder through history. His voice, though ancient, is not dead. It was preserved, remembered, feared. Why was this man chosen? Why Enoch? Why did heaven open its gates to him and not to others? The rabbis pondered this for generations. Some said it was because Enoch lived with extraordinary holiness. Others suggested that God, foreseeing the corruption of the world before the flood, snatched him away early to preserve his purity. But the writings attributed to Enoch himself, those banned, buried, and forbidden texts, tell a different story. They suggest that God lifted Enoch because he was to become a messenger, a heavenly intermediary, the first human to be entrusted with cosmic secrets. If Enoch was indeed shown the mysteries of the universe, then his book is not simply apocalyptic imagination. It is testimony. Testimony of what he saw in the heavens. Testimony of angels who rebelled. Testimony of giants who once walked the earth. Testimony of the Son of Man enthroned beside the Ancient of Days, written centuries before Jesus of Nazareth was born. One man living before the flood somehow glimpsed the Messiah who would come millennia later. One man saw both the corruption of angels and the judgment of God. One man recorded visions that could destabilize the power structures of both temple and empire. Is it any wonder then that his words were suppressed, that the Book of Enoch was embraced in Ethiopia, but banished in Rome, that his prophecies were feared as much as they were revered? Before we dive into the secrets of angels and giants, we must sit with the sheer strangeness of this figure. Enoch's story is both haunting and hopeful. Haunting because it reveals that there is more to human history than the visible, that behind the curtain of our world lies a cosmic drama of rebellion and judgment. Hopeful because it shows that a human being, fragile, mortal, finite, can walk so closely with God that he transcends death itself. For the audience of ancient Israel, Enoch was a living testimony that death does not have the final word. He was a sign that intimacy with God could carry a person beyond the grave. And for us, he remains a symbol of what it means to live not just in the world, but with God, moment by moment, step by step. But here is the lingering question, our hook to the next stage of this journey. If Enoch walked so closely with God that he was carried into heaven, what exactly did he see there? What was revealed to him in the halls of eternity that made empires tremble and priests conspire to silence his words? The answer lies in the forbidden pages of his writings. Visions of angels who felled giants, who corrupted the earth, and a Messiah whose throne was prepared from the foundation of the world. And so as we leave chapter 1, we stand at the threshold of Revelation. We have met Enoch, the man who did not die. But in the chapters ahead, we will uncover why his book was buried and why its secrets are resurfacing now. Because if God took Enoch to reveal what no eye had seen, then the question for us is this: are we ready to hear it? Chapter 2. Why the Book of Enoch was banned. When we speak of forbidden books, most people imagine fringe texts, strange writings that never truly belong to the faith. But the Book of Enoch is different. This was not some late invention. It was a text revered in ancient Judaism. It shaped the imagination of Israel long before the birth of Christ. It was quoted directly in the New Testament itself. The Apostle Jude in verses 14 and 15 writes, "Enoch the seventh from Adam prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all." This is not a casual reference. Jude cites Enoch as prophecy, placing his words on the same level as the Hebrew prophets. Even early church fathers like Tertullian in the 2nd century defended the Book of Enoch as inspired. For centuries it was read alongside Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. So the question is not whether Enoch mattered. The real question is, why was he silenced? Enoch's writings reveal too much. They tear back the curtain on the invisible war between heaven and earth. They describe in detail the fall of the Watchers. The angels who abandoned their heavenly posts descended upon Mount Hermon and took human wives. From this unholy union came the Nephilim giants, of terrifying strength beings who devoured the earth and corrupted its people. The Book of Enoch names names. It describes Samjaza Azil and the 200 angels who conspired together in rebellion. It describes how they taught forbidden knowledge, sorcery, astrology, weapon-making, seduction, and it reveals how this knowledge led humanity into violence and destruction so great that God himself decreed the flood. Imagine how dangerous this was to the ruling elite. If angels could rebel, if heavenly beings could be judged, then what of kings and priests? What of empires who claim divine right? Enoch's message thundered. No one is above judgment. Not angels, not rulers, not even the mighty of the earth. The banning of Enoch was not simply theological, it was political. The text was not discarded because it lacked truth, but because it proclaimed too much of it. By the 4th century, when the canon of Scripture was being solidified in Rome, Christianity was no longer a persecuted faith. It had become the religion of empire. Councils convened not in secret catacombs, but in imperial halls. The church was now bound to political power. And the Book of Enoch, with its terrifying vision of corrupt angels, divine judgment, and cosmic rebellion, was too volatile for the empire's comfort. Enoch exposed the real enemies of humanity. Not merely foreign nations, not rival tribes, but spiritual forces of rebellion. invisible powers pulling the strings behind kings and empires. Such a message could not be controlled. It could not be safely domesticated into a state religion, so the book was quietly pushed aside. In the West, it was forgotten. By the Middle Ages, most Christians had never even heard of it. Only in Ethiopia, far from the reach of Roman politics, did the Book of Enoch survive preserved in the ancient Gaius language read as part of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. Isn't it ironic? The very empire that claimed to defend the faith cut away one of its oldest prophetic voices. The people who sought control erased the very book that warned against corrupted power. If Enoch's words were dangerous, what exactly did he say? What was it about his visions that made rulers tremble and councils conspire? Enoch does not simply describe the fall of angels. He records visions of the Messiah, the Son of Man, long before the Gospels. He describes judgment not as a faraway event, but as a cosmic certainty. And he insists that God's justice will come against both heavenly rebels and earthly kings alike. This was the truth too sharp for empire to handle, too unmanageable for priests who wished to keep control, too unsettling for those who preferred religion without revelation. And so the Book of Enoch was silenced. But silence cannot last forever, for the words of Enoch still whisper through history. They surface in Jude, they echo in Revelation, they survive in Ethiopia. And they are resurfacing now at a moment when the world is once again wrestling with hidden powers, unseen forces, and the longing for justice. What did Enoch truly see? What visions of rebellion, giants, and cosmic judgment did he record? What revelations were so explosive that an empire felt safer erasing them? The answer awaits us in the next chapter. For to understand why the book was banned, we must now open its pages. And the first page reveals a story of angels who fell. Chapter 3, The Watchers and the Nephilim. When we open the forbidden pages of Enoch, we are immediately thrust into a story that sounds more like myth. Yet it was once treated as sacred history. A story so disturbing, so strange, that it explains why the book was silenced for centuries. It is the story of the Watchers angels who were meant to guard mankind, but instead corrupted it. Enoch describes how 200 angels bound to watch over humanity descended from the heights of heaven. They came to earth in rebellion, and they made a pact upon a mountain that still casts its shadow today, Mount Hermon. Their leader was Samjaza, a mighty angel whose charisma persuaded the others to join him. He feared that if one fell, the others would not follow. So they swore together, binding themselves in an oath of rebellion. These were not demons, as later traditions imagined. They were once radiant beings, guardians of heaven's order, and yet they abandoned their posts. They looked upon the daughters of men, and desire burned within them. And so they took wives from among humanity. From this unholy union came the Nephilim, giants of unimaginable size. Enoch records their height as 300 cubits. If we take that literally, it would make them monstrous beings towering beyond comprehension. But whether literal or symbolic, the message is clear. These creatures were larger-than-life devourers of both earth and mankind. The Nephilim became tyrants. They consumed all that humanity could produce. And when food ran short, they turned upon mankind itself. Violence spread like wildfire. The earth groaned under their weight. What began as desire became devastation, and the human world was plunged into chaos. The Watchers did not merely corrupt by lust, they corrupted by knowledge. They shared secrets never meant for human hands. Aziel taught men how to forge weapons, to craft swords and shields, unleashing organized war for the first time. Others taught the enchantments of sorcery, the reading of the stars, the cutting of roots for spells. They revealed the use of cosmetics, how to paint the face, adorn the body, and manipulate desire. In short, they opened the vaults of forbidden wisdom, technology, magic, seduction, astrology. For us today, these things sound ordinary, even trivial. But in the worldview of ancient Israel, they represented a theft of heaven's order. Knowledge given at the wrong time and the wrong way to hearts not ready to bear it. It was Pandora's box opened by angels themselves. The story of Enoch forces us to ask, where did the knowledge of violence, of sorcery, of manipulation come from? Were these inventions of man or gifts of beings who should never have interfered? The corruption grew unbearable. Humanity was enslaved by violence, intoxicated with power, chained by lust. And so, according to Enoch, the cries of the earth reached the throne of heaven. The angels who had remained faithful, the archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, brought the matter before God. The judgment was sealed. Enoch records the sentence in chilling words. The watchers would be bound in chains, cast into the abyss, awaiting the great day of judgment. Their offspring, the Nephilim, would be destroyed in the flood, their spirits cursed to wander the earth as restless demons. And so the great angels descended to carry out the decree. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, the enforcers of heaven's justice, moved against their fallen brothers. Enoch writes with the voice of an eyewitness, as though he stood watching the skies burn with divine fury. The watchers, once radiant, were dragged in humiliation. The giants, once unstoppable, were drowned in waters that swallowed their arrogance. And Noah's generation would be purged of the corruption that began on Mount Hermon. And this is why the Book of Enoch was too dangerous to survive, because it declared without hesitation that evil did not simply come from man's weakness. It came from higher beings, creatures of power and glory, who used their authority to enslave and corrupt. And if even angels could fall, then what hope had the rulers of earth to escape God's judgment? But Enoch does not end here. The story of the Watchers and the Nephilim is not the final revelation. For in the midst of judgment, Enoch saw something far greater. He saw beyond the rebellion of angels, beyond the flood of destruction, into the very throne room of heaven itself. Because Enoch records not only the fall of the Watchers, but the rise of a figure greater than them all, a figure he calls the Son of Man. And if that vision is true, then the forbidden book does not simply explain the past, it predicts the future. Chapter 4. Enoch beholds the Son of Man. The visions of the Watchers and the Nephilim are terrifying. They explain how the world became so corrupt that a flood was inevitable. But Enoch's revelations do not stop with fallen angels and giants. Beyond the chaos, he is lifted higher. His eyes are open not only to judgment on earth, but to a throne in heaven. And here he sees a figure that would shake theology for centuries. Enoch writes of a vision of the Ancient of Days, the Eternal One seated in indescribable majesty. His garments were white like snow, his throne blazing with fire, rivers of flame flowing before him. This imagery later appears in Daniel, but Enoch records it first. Yet the vision does not end there. For beside this Ancient of Days, Enoch sees another figure, radiant, glorious, yet distinct. He calls him the Son of Man. Enoch describes this Son of Man as seated on a throne of glory, given authority over the nations, and destined to judge kings, rulers, and the mighty of the earth. He is not a mere angel. He is not one of the Watchers. He is a heavenly figure who pre-existed creation itself. Enoch is writing centuries before Jesus of Nazareth ever walked the earth, long before Bethlehem, long before the Gospels, long before the church. Yet he speaks of a Messiah enthroned in heaven, awaiting the time of judgment. In Jewish tradition, the title Son of Man would later be used by Daniel and then taken upon the lips of Jesus himself. But Enoch already saw it. He already spoke of it. He describes the Son of Man as the chosen one, the righteous one, the elect of God, existing before time began. Enoch's words are breathtaking. The chosen one existed before creation. This statement alone is explosive. It suggests that the Messiah was not a late development, not a plan B, not a product of human longing. The Messiah was written into the fabric of eternity, present with God before the world was even formed. For early Christians, this was electrifying. When they read Enoch's visions, they saw confirmation that Jesus was not an accident of history, but the fulfillment of a plan older than Adam. No wonder the Ethiopian church preserved the book while Roman councils quietly set it aside. A Messiah enthroned in heaven, present before creation. This was too powerful a witness. Enoch says that the Son of Man will sit on the throne of glory to execute judgment on kings, rulers, and the mighty. He will cast down the proud, vindicate the righteous, and bring justice to a broken world. Remember, this is not centuries after Christ looking back. This is prophecy spoken thousands of years before Bethlehem. Enoch's Messiah is not only a judge, he is also a refuge. Enoch describes him as a light to the nations, a hope for the righteous, a source of salvation for those oppressed by the violence of the watchers and their offspring. The Son of Man is both terrifying in his judgment and beautiful in his mercy. This duality, judge and savior, anticipates the very tension of the Gospels. Jesus comes as the one who forgives sinners, yet condemns hypocrisy, the one who heals the broken, yet overturns the tables of the corrupt. Enoch, centuries earlier, already glimpsed this paradox, but this vision was dangerous for empire. For if the Son of Man has ultimate authority, then Caesar does not. If the chosen one is enthroned before creation, then the power of earthly rulers is temporary at best. If God himself has chosen a heavenly Messiah to bring justice, then no priest, no king, no conqueror can claim absolute power. This is why the Book of Enoch was not merely strange, it was revolutionary. It proclaimed a Messiah who transcended politics, who would bring judgment not only on angels but on rulers and empires. Some Jewish sects, such as those at Qumran, preserved fragments of Enoch because they longed for deliverance from oppressive regimes. They saw in the Son of Man the hope of a new order, one not bound to Rome or to Herod. Later, when Jesus identified himself with the title Son of Man, he was stepping into an identity already revealed to Enoch. This was not a self-invented claim. It was the continuation of a prophecy thousands of years old. Imagine the weight of that moment when Jesus stood before the Sanhedrin and declared, "You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." The high priests tore their robes. Why? Because they recognized it. They had heard it before in Daniel, yes, but also in Enoch. He was claiming the throne that Enoch saw. What does this mean for us? It means the plan of God was never accidental. Redemption was never improvised. The Messiah was always there, seated beside the Ancient of Days, waiting for the appointed time. But Enoch's vision goes further. He does not only see the Messiah enthroned, he sees him presiding over cosmic judgment, opening books of destiny, revealing mysteries written before the dawn of time. If this is true, then the universe itself is shaped around him. Creation, history, and destiny all orbit the throne of the Son of Man. If Enoch saw the Messiah before Bethlehem, if he saw the Son of Man enthroned beside the Eternal One, then what else did he see? What mysteries of the cosmos, of time, of the heavens themselves were shown to him? For in the next vision, Enoch is carried beyond thrones and judgment. He is led into the architecture of the universe itself, the courses of the sun, the gates of the stars, the secrets of time. If he truly saw the Messiah before creation, then perhaps he also saw the blueprint of creation itself. Chapter 5. The Astronomical Book and the Calendar of Heaven. The visions of Enoch move from the throne room of heaven into something even stranger. Guided by the angel Uriel, the archangel of wisdom, Enoch is taken on a journey through the cosmos itself. He is shown not only the fate of angels and men, but the hidden mechanics of creation, the movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars. What he records is known as the Astronomical Book, or sometimes the Book of the Heavenly Luminaries. This is no ordinary vision. It is not poetry. It is not metaphor. Enoch writes with the precision of someone keeping a record, as if he has been brought into heaven's observatory and asked to take notes. He is shown the doors of the sky through which the sun rises and sets the gates through which the moon passes, the paths of the stars, the cycles of light and darkness. Uriel explains to Enoch that the true year consists of 364 days, 12 months of 30 days each, with 4 intercalary days to complete the cycle. This calendar, precise and orderly, was believed to be the divine order of time itself. Unlike the lunar calendars of Babylon or even the later Jewish tradition, which often struggled with irregular months and adjustments, Enoch's calendar was pure, symmetrical, and exact. For ancient hearers, this was astonishing. The heavens were not chaotic. They were not ruled by the whims of gods or the confusion of men. They were a carefully designed system measured by divine decree. time itself was holy, and its rhythms were written into creation. While the Western Church and Jewish communities eventually abandoned the 364-day system, the Ethiopian tradition preserved it. To this day, Ethiopia uses a calendar that echoes Enoch's vision, a rhythm of time different from the Gregorian calendar the modern world takes for granted. In other words, what much of the world lost, Ethiopia kept. Why would an empire suppress not only Enoch's stories of angels and giants, but even his understanding of time? Because to control religion, one must also control the calendar. Festivals, Sabbaths, feasts, all depend on time. Whoever defines time defines worship. By erasing Enoch's calendar, political and religious leaders could replace divine order with human power. Enoch's calendar was not simply about counting days. It symbolized alignment with heaven. To live by it was to walk in step with the cosmic order God had written into creation. To abandon it was to walk in confusion. Uriel tells Enoch that those who deviate from this order would stumble, nations would lose their way, priests would corrupt their service. And indeed, history records how calendars shifted, festivals drifted, and debates raged over when to celebrate Passover or Easter. What began as a cosmic pattern became a battlefield of politics. But the astronomical book is more than technical detail. As Enoch watches the movements of the sun and moon, he realizes he is being shown something greater. The heavenly bodies are not just lights in the sky, they are signs. They bear witness to appointed times, to seasons of judgment and redemption. The cosmos itself is a prophetic clock. Enoch's vision connects the order of the heavens with the destiny of humanity. The same God who sets the sun on its path sets history on its course. The same precision that governs the stars governs the rise and fall of kingdoms. Modern science spends billions studying the universe, mapping the stars, measuring time with atomic clocks. Yet here, thousands of years ago, Enoch wrote of a cosmos structured with meaning, not randomness. What physicists call laws of nature, Enoch called the ordinances of heaven. And this explains why the astronomical book was controversial. If time and history are divinely ordered, then empires cannot simply bend them to their will. If creation itself testifies to God's authority, then kings and councils cannot redefine truth at their convenience. But Ethiopia preserved it. In their Bible, the astronomical book remains. Their calendar, rooted in Enoch's revelation, continues to tick in rhythm with a tradition most of the world has forgotten. It is as though Ethiopia chose to keep step with heaven while others align themselves with empire. Imagine Enoch being led by Uriel through the chambers of the cosmos, seeing the gates of the east where the sun emerges, the doors of the west where it sinks, the circuits of the moon waxing and waning. He is not overwhelmed. He is instructed. He is told this is the order God has set, the rhythm of creation, the measure of time. If Enoch was shown the secrets of the heavens, what else did he see? Was his vision limited to stars and calendars, or did it stretch further to the story of mankind itself? The astronomical book closes with the sense that time is not neutral, it carries destiny. The movements of the heavens are not merely physical, they are prophetic. Each rising and setting of the sun points to an appointed moment. Each cycle of the moon whispers of history unfolding. Creation itself is a revelation. And so as Enoch's journey continues, the focus shifts from the order of the cosmos to the order of history. For the same God who governs the stars also governs the nations. The same pattern that guides the sun guides humanity's future. And this leads us to the next vision, one of the most mysterious in the entire book, the animal apocalypse. For in it, Enoch does not simply see stars and calendars. He sees the rise and fall of empires, the story of Israel, and the nations all told through the language of animals. If the astronomical book revealed the order of the heavens, then the animal apocalypse reveals the hidden order of history itself. Chapter 6. The Animal Apocalypse. After being shown the architecture of the heavens, Enoch's journey takes a dramatic turn. The angelic guide reveals not stars this time, but symbols, images of animals that together form one of the strangest and most profound visions in all of ancient literature. Scholars call it the animal apocalypse. And through it, Enoch sees the entire history of mankind from Adam to the very end of the age. In this vision, humanity does not appear as men and women. Instead, they are portrayed as animals, each nation, each people, each figure clothed in symbolic form. What begins as simple becomes astonishingly complex. Through animals, Enoch sees the drama of salvation history unfold. Adam is described as a white bull, pure and strong, from whom springs the generations of mankind. His descendants multiply as different kinds of animals, some faithful, some wandering, some predatory. The story becomes a mirror. Humanity's choices, their sins, their rebellions, their triumphs, all reflected in the faces of beasts. The enemies of God's people appear as wild predators, wolves, lions, and leopards, creatures that devour, oppress, and enslave. Israel, however, is portrayed as sheep, vulnerable, scattered, often attacked, but chosen and watched over by the Lord of the flock. Enoch's vision is not random imagination. It is a sweeping summary of Israel's history disguised in animal imagery. Egypt appears as beasts that enslave. The Exodus is pictured as the Lord leading sheep out of bondage. The judges and kings arise as shepherds, some faithful, others corrupt. The prophets are watchdogs crying out against the danger of predators. And finally, the exile is portrayed as the scattering of sheep among wolves. The vision crescendos when Enoch sees the arrival of a majestic figure, the Son of Man, appearing symbolically as a radiant white lamb. This lamb shines brighter than any animal before him. In his presence, the enemies tremble. Wolves scatter, lions retreat. The sheep are gathered, healed, and restored. The lamb becomes the shepherd. And through him, justice finally arrives. Can you feel the weight of this written centuries before Jesus? Enoch's vision anticipates the very imagery the New Testament would later embrace Christ as the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, the shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. What John the Baptist proclaimed in the Jordan, Enoch had already seen in vision long before. The animal apocalypse is not merely a coded history lesson, it is prophecy in disguise. By clothing nations and figures in animal forms, the message could be remembered, retold, and recognized across generations. Those who had ears to hear, those who understood the symbols, could see the outline of God's plan stretching from the beginning to the end. Why animals? Because animals cut through language and politics. A sheep being devoured by wolves is an image any culture can grasp. A shining lamb who drives away predators is a symbol that transcends borders. In this way, the vision becomes universal, accessible even to those who had no scrolls or scribes. But there is more. Enoch does not stop with the lamb's appearance. He pushes beyond history into the future. He sees a final judgment where the shepherd comes to weigh every beast, every bird, every creeping thing. No predator escapes. No corruption is hidden. The vision promises that injustice will not have the final word. In this way, the animal apocalypse is both a retrospective and a prophecy. It recounts the past while foreshadowing the end. It is like a tapestry woven from the threads of history and destiny. This explains why the book was feared. If it truly mapped history in advance, if it truly foresaw the Messiah as the radiant white lamb, then it proved that God's hand was directing history all along. And such knowledge was dangerous for empires that thrived on the illusion of control. The image of the lamb in Enoch's vision is not weak. It is not passive. It shines with cosmic authority. The lamb is enthroned beside the Ancient of Days, the same figure Enoch saw earlier as the Son of Man. It is the same person revealed in different images. Messiah as judge, Messiah as shepherd, Messiah as lamb. Pause and let that settle. The animal apocalypse shows us that history itself is not random. It is ordered, purposeful, moving toward a climax where justice will prevail, and that climax is judgment. For the next vision, Enoch no longer speaks in symbols. He hears the decree itself that the Lord will come with myriads of his angels to bind the rebellious, to destroy the wicked, and to exalt the righteous. If the animal apocalypse revealed the hidden structure of history, Then the next revelation unveils the terrifying reality of final judgment. Chapter 7. The Epistle of Enoch. The final warning. The visions of Enoch reach their sharpest edge in what is called the Epistle of Enoch, a series of warnings, exhortations, and prophecies addressed not only to his generation, but to every generation to come. If the animal apocalypse mapped history, the epistle delivers the verdict. It is here that the tone shifts from vision to declaration, from imagery to judgment. Enoch sees the Lord himself coming with myriads of angels, an army of radiant beings descending from the heights of heaven. He hears the decree that the day of reckoning is not a rumor, not a distant dream, but a certainty written into the foundations of creation. The heavens tremble, the mountains melt like wax, and all who thought themselves secure realize that nothing can withstand divine justice. This vision is echoed centuries later in the letter of Jude when he cites Enoch's prophecy. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his holy ones to execute judgment on all and to convict all the ungodly of their deeds. Jude's inclusion of Enoch's words confirms their gravity. This was not marginal. This was foundational. Humanity is divided into two, not by nation, not by wealth, not by power, but by righteousness. On one side stand the just, the humble, the faithful, the ones who walked in reverence before God. On the other stand the wicked, the oppressors, the arrogant, the corrupters of truth. There is no neutral ground. In Enoch's vision, the final judgment does not weigh titles or reputations, but hearts and deeds. Enoch's words strike with precision. Justice is not delayed, it is written in heaven. This is a declaration that all things are already recorded, that no injustice slips through unnoticed, that no act of faithfulness is forgotten. The heavenly tablets, as Enoch calls them, contain the full account. What is hidden on earth is exposed in heaven. In our world, justice often seems slow. The wicked prosper, the righteous suffer, empires rise through violence, the poor are crushed in silence. But Enoch's epistle insists that delay is not denial. Judgment is not absent. It is merely waiting for its appointed time. The epistle speaks directly to the oppressors of the world. Kings, rulers, and mighty men are told that their thrones will not protect them. You have devoured the righteous as wolves devour sheep. Enoch declares, but the shepherd comes. Their weapons, their armies, their riches. None will shield them when heaven's court convenes. Yet at the same time, Enoch comforts the righteous. He promises that those who kept faith, who endured persecution, who lived quietly in integrity, will shine like stars in the kingdom to come. Their names are written not in the chronicles of men, but in the tablets of heaven. For them, the judgment is not destruction, but vindication. This double-edged doom for the arrogant, hope for the faithful, is the heartbeat of the epistle. It is what makes it so relevant even today. For we still live in a world of predators and victims of corruption and resistance. Enoch's words pierce across time. The judge is coming. Align yourself with righteousness now. But why would such a message be suppressed? Because it removes the illusion of control. If justice is written in heaven, then no empire can rewrite it. If the final verdict belongs to God, then earthly courts and councils lose their monopoly on truth. The Epistle of Enoch undermined the power of priests and kings by announcing a higher court whose rulings cannot be appealed. Enoch insists that the judgment is cosmic, not just human. The angels who fell the watchers who corrupted mankind will be bound in chains of fire. Their demonic offspring will be condemned to eternal wandering. Evil is not eternal. Its time is limited. Its destiny is destruction. Imagine the courage it took to proclaim this in a world where empires claimed divinity, where rulers were worshipped as gods. To stand and declare, no, there is only one judge and he will not be mocked. This is the voice of Enoch. But here lies the deeper tension, the question that gnaws at us as readers. What of Enoch himself? He is the messenger of judgment, the prophet of doom and hope, the one who saw further than any man before him. But what became of him? Did he face death like the others? Did he vanish into myth, or was his destiny even stranger? For the next chapter reveals the mystery of Enoch's own fate, the man who walked with God and was not found. The prophet, some traditions say, became the angel Metatron, the heavenly scribe of eternity. If Enoch prophesied judgment for the world, then what judgment or what glory fell upon him? Chapter 8. The extraordinary fate of Enoch. Among all the patriarchs listed in Genesis, only 2 break the universal law of death. Elijah carried away in a whirlwind of fire, and Enoch, the man who walked with God and was not for God, took him. These words stand like a thunderclap in the genealogy of Adam. Everyone else, and he died, and he died, and he died. But not Enoch. His story ends not with a grave, but with a disappearance. Enoch did not die. He was taken, lifted, caught up by God himself. In an age when death reigned, one man slipped through its fingers. But what does it mean that God took him? Jewish tradition wrestled with this question. Some believed Enoch was translated into paradise, preserved as a witness until the final judgment. Others suggested he became a heavenly scribe, recording the decrees of the Most High. Still others, especially in later mystical writings, identified him with one of the most mysterious figures in Jewish lore, the angel Metatron. The claim is astonishing. A mortal man transformed into a celestial being. Humanity elevated into angelic form. In this vision, Enoch does not simply escape death. He crosses the boundary between human and divine, becoming the bridge between earth and heaven. The idea of Metatron emerges in rabbinic and mystical literature centuries after Enoch lived. But the seed is already there in Genesis and in the Book of Enoch itself. Enoch is called the righteous scribe, the one who writes down heavenly mysteries. In later tradition, Metatron is described as the scribe of heaven seated beside the throne, recording the deeds of humanity. The parallels are unmistakable. If this is true, then Enoch is not only a witness of the past, but also a participant in the governance of heaven, a man elevated to angelic rank, entrusted with authority, standing closer to the throne than any other. In mystical Jewish writings, Metatron is sometimes described as the lesser YHWH, a being so radiant with divine presence that he bears the very name of God. He is said to have 70 names, countless eyes, and a stature that fills the universe. But behind this terrifying figure is the man who once walked among us, the 7th from Adam, a father, a grandfather, a human. The transformation of Enoch into Metatron, whether literal or symbolic, speaks to something profound. The destiny of humanity is not merely survival, but transformation. In Enoch, we see a preview of resurrection, a foreshadowing of the promise that mortality can put on immortality, that flesh can be clothed with glory. Empires claim to turn men into gods through monuments, through titles, through power. Pharaohs were deified. Caesars called themselves divine, but their glory ended in dust. Enoch, a man with no empire, no throne, no army, was lifted higher than any king, not by conquest, but by walking with God. This is why his story mattered so much, and why it was so threatening. It proclaimed that true exaltation comes not through empire, but through intimacy with the Creator. It told every generation, you do not need Rome, you do not need Babylon, you do not need to be crowned by men. Walk with God and heaven itself will open. The West largely forgot this story. In the biblical canon shaped by Rome, Enoch is reduced to a single enigmatic verse in Genesis and a brief mention in Hebrews. By faith, Enoch was taken so that he did not see death, but Ethiopia preserved far more. In the Ethiopian Bible, the Book of Enoch remains. There, his journey, his visions, his transformation are not silenced but celebrated. And this is crucial. Ethiopia testifies that Enoch's fate was not only about one man, it was about the destiny of humanity itself. To preserve Enoch is to preserve the hope that man is not bound to dust, that the line between heaven and earth is thinner than empire wants us to believe. What does it mean that a man became an angel? It means the story of humanity is not static. It is not locked to mortality. It is a journey upward, a possibility of transfiguration. Enoch becomes the proof that human life is not meaningless, that communion with God leads beyond even death. And so Enoch's fate is not merely a mystery to be debated by scholars. It is a challenge. It forces us to ask if Enoch was taken because he walked with God. Then what path are we walking? What destiny are we preparing for? But the story of Enoch is not the end because the Ethiopian Bible does not stop with him. Ethiopia preserved an entire collection of writings erased from the Western canon texts like Jubilees and the Kragast books that reveal a Christianity and a faith with roots in Africa, not Europe. If Enoch shows us the destiny of a man, Ethiopia shows us the destiny of a people. And that is where our journey leads next. Chapter 9, the Ethiopian Bible in the Lost Books. If Enoch's personal fate was extraordinary, then what Ethiopia preserved is nothing short of revolutionary. While most of the Christian world knows the Bible as 66 books, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church holds a canon of 88. It is the broadest biblical collection in Christianity. And within its pages are writings that the Western world either discarded or suppressed texts, like the Book of Enoch Jubilees and the Kebra Nagest. Here is the shocking truth. The Western canon was cut, pruned, and shaped by councils bound to political powers. But in Ethiopia, far from the grasp of Rome, the scriptures were preserved in their fullness. Where the West closed the book at 66, Ethiopia kept the door open to 88. The presence of Enoch in their canon alone is astonishing. While Rome buried it, Ethiopia read it. Generations grew up hearing the stories of the Watchers, the visions of the Son of Man, and the calendar of heaven. For Ethiopians, this was not Apocrypha, it was Scripture. Then comes Jubilees, sometimes called Little Genesis. This book retells the early chapters of Genesis with incredible detail, describing not just events, but timelines, festivals, and the heavenly order that governed creation. Jubilees insists that God's covenant is woven into time itself, measured in jubilees of 49 years, establishing a rhythm of liberation and restoration. To read Jubilees is to see history not as chaos, but as sacred cycles. And then there is the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings, the national epic of Ethiopia. It tells of Solomon, the Queen of Sheba, and the Ark of the Covenant brought into Africa. For centuries, Ethiopians have believed that the Ark rests within their land, guarded and hidden, a sign that God's presence and covenant are not confined to Europe or the Middle East. This is not myth for them, it is identity. The implications are enormous. The Ethiopian canon shows that Christianity did not begin as a European religion. Its roots were African and Asian long before Europe claimed ownership. By preserving Enoch and Jubilees, Ethiopia kept alive the Jewish Christian traditions that flourished in the East but were trimmed away in the West. By cherishing the Kebra Nagast, they declared that Africa was not a footnote to the story of faith. It was one of its pillars. Think about how history has been told. For centuries, the story of Christianity has been painted in Western colors. Rome, Constantinople, Europe. Africa was treated as a mission field, a recipient of the gospel, not a birthplace of it. Yet Ethiopia flips that script. They did not receive a cut-down Bible from Europe. They had their scriptures long before. They guarded books the West rejected. They lived a Christianity rooted not in empire but in preservation. Ethiopia's 88 books stand as a silent rebuke to the Western canon. They whisper, "What you called Apocrypha, we called truth. What you erased, we remembered. What you feared, we preserved." This is why the Ethiopian Bible is so explosive today. It challenges the assumption that the Bible is a closed book, frozen in the form Rome decided. It reminds us that Scripture has always been larger, richer, more diverse than we were told, and it raises uncomfortable questions. Who gave councils the authority to cut out voices like Enoch? What truths were lost when the canon was trimmed? But perhaps the most provocative twist is this. Ethiopia's canon reveals a faith unchained from Europe, a Christianity rooted in Africa, intertwined with Jewish tradition, and alive with prophetic fire. In preserving Enoch and Jubilees, they preserve the vision of cosmic justice, the hope of Messiah, and the rhythm of heaven's calendar. In cherishing the Cabernos, they preserve their national identity as guardians of God's covenant. This means that the Bible most of the world knows, the 66 books, is not the only Bible. It is one version shaped by empire, edited by power. Ethiopia reminds us that there were other voices, other visions, other scriptures that carried equal weight in the ancient world. And here lies the danger. For if Christianity is not solely Western, if its roots are also African, then the story changes. No longer is Europe the center of the faith. No longer are empires the guardians of revelation. The truth is older, deeper, and broader. The truth includes Africa. But this is not the only secret Ethiopia preserved. Beyond the Book of Enoch, beyond Jubilees, beyond the Kenest, there is another mystery one that touches directly on the life of Jesus himself. For in Ethiopia's tradition, the silent years of Christ, the years between his boyhood and his ministry, are not silent at all. They contain stories too dangerous for the West, too miraculous to ignore. And that is where we turn next. Chapter 10. The Missing Years of Jesus. Every Bible reader eventually stumbles upon a haunting silence. We see Jesus as a child in Bethlehem. We see him presented in the temple. We glimpse him at 12 years old, speaking with astonishing wisdom among the teachers of Jerusalem, and then nothing. The Gospels fall silent for nearly 2 decades. 18 years of Jesus' life vanish from the Western canon. From age 12 until he appears at the Jordan River at about 30, the story is blank. This is what scholars call the missing years of Jesus. For Western Christianity, it is a void, a mystery that has provoked endless speculation. What did he do? Where did he go? Was he in Nazareth all along, working quietly as a carpenter? Or did he travel, learn, and reveal glimpses of his divine power that later generations sought to hide? Here is where Ethiopia steps forward. In their tradition, preserved in manuscripts that survived outside the reach of Rome, the silence is broken. The Ethiopian Bible includes accounts of Jesus' boyhood miracle stories that Western canon rejected, but which circulated widely in the early church. In one account, the young Jesus forms birds out of clay, breathes upon them, and they take flight. In another, he strikes the ground and water bursts forth. In yet another, he raises a child from the dead, astonishing his playmates and terrifying the elders. Some stories even describe him taming wild beasts, commanding lions and leopards as though they were gentle pets. These are not fairy tales to the Ethiopian tradition. They are testimony fragments of memory preserved in a community that revered Christ, not only as a teacher, but as a miracle-working child. So why were these stories cut from the Western Bible? The answer is unsettling. Roman and European councils considered them too dangerous. They portrayed Jesus as too divine, too filled with heavenly power even as a child. For a religion being shaped into the creed of empire, this was destabilizing. If Jesus was already radiating divine authority from his youth, then he was not simply a man adopted by God at baptism, as some early heresies suggested. He was the eternal Word in flesh from the beginning. And there was another problem. These stories carried echoes of Africa. The Ethiopian preservation of them tied the memory of Jesus not to Rome but to a broader, older world, one in which Africa had a role in safeguarding his story. To accept these accounts was to admit that Europe was not the sole custodian of Christ. Can you see the pattern? Again and again, the West trims the story while Ethiopia keeps it intact. They preserved Enoch, they preserved Jubilees, they preserved the Kernagest, and they preserved stories of Jesus' childhood that others erased. These miracles of youth may shock modern ears. A boy creating birds from clay, a child raising the dead. But consider what they declare. The divine nature of Christ was not something he grew into. It was always present, even in his earliest days. The silence in the Western canon was not an accident. It was an erasure for Ethiopia. However, these accounts deepen the mystery and glory of the Incarnation. They show a Christ who is not divided man first, then divine later, but one whose divinity and humanity walk together from the very beginning. But the implications are not only theological, they are political. To suppress these stories was to reshape Jesus into a figure manageable for empire. A Christ whose divinity appears late can be interpreted as someone whose authority is mediated through church and state, but a Christ who commands life and death even as a boy. That Christ belongs to no empire, answers to no council, and bends before no earthly throne. This is why Ethiopia's witness matters so much. It is not simply a curiosity, a collection of extra tales. It is a reminder that the image of Christ handed down in Europe is not the only one. There is an African memory of Jesus that magnifies his glory and disrupts the neat categories of Western theology. What do we lose when we cut away 18 years of Christ's life? We lose the continuity of his divinity. We lose the wonder of a God who was never absent, never silent, even in the hidden years. And perhaps we lose the reminder that the roots of Christianity are not confined to Rome, but stretch deep into Africa. Ethiopia did not let those years disappear. They remembered, they recorded. They passed down stories that testified to a Christ whose presence was uncontrollable, unstoppable, uncontainable. A Christ who could not be silenced even in his boyhood. And this brings us to the deeper issue. The eraser of Jesus' missing years was not only about theology, it was about power. For behind every cut, every suppression, every decision about what counts as scripture, there is politics. And the next chapter uncovers just how much the Bible itself was shaped, edited, and weaponized by empire. Chapter 11. Theology and Politics Distorted. From the beginning, faith was meant to liberate. The God of Enoch, the God of Abraham, the God revealed in Christ. He is the one who breaks chains, topples idols, and brings justice to the oppressed. Yet as Christianity moved from a persecuted faith to the religion of empire, its message was reshaped. Theology became a tool of politics. Revelation became policy, and truth was bent to serve power. When Rome embraced Christianity, it did not simply welcome the gospel, it reactioned it. Books were cut, voices silenced, and interpretation standardized. Councils determined what could be read and what must be buried. The Ethiopian Bible kept 88 books. Rome cut it to 66. Why? Because the books Ethiopia preserved emphasized divine justice, exposed corruption, and called rulers to account. Such books were dangerous for empire. But the distortion went deeper than censorship. It seeped into translation itself. Words that once carried liberating fire were softened, redirected, or redefined. Take the word hell. In Hebrew, the original word was Sheol, the grave, the realm of the dead, a shadowy existence. In Greek, the word was Hades. But when translated into Latin and later European tongues, hell was colored with imagery of eternal torture. It became less about death's defeat and more about fear's control. Instead of pointing to God's victory over death, it was wielded as a threat to keep peasants obedient to church and state. Consider the word virgin. In Isaiah, the prophecy speaks of a young woman, Hebrew Alma, who would bear a child as a sign. But in translation, the term was rendered as virgin Parthenos in Greek. The shift was not merely linguistic. It reinforced an image of Mary that fit the church's agenda of purity and control over sexuality. The mystery of the Incarnation was turned into a doctrine that reinforced celibacy as spiritual superiority, shaping centuries of theology and church law. Or take the image of God. In Genesis, all humanity, male and female, is said to be created in God's image. It is a declaration of universal dignity. But in practice, empire twisted it. Certain groups, women, slaves, Africans, the poor, were told they bore that image less fully. The text meant to liberate was manipulated to justify oppression. Theology was bent to maintain hierarchies. And notice the pattern. The very books and words that proclaimed justice, liberation, and equality were the ones trimmed, mistranslated, or reinterpreted. The Book of Enoch declares that angels and rulers alike will be judged cut. Jubilees insists that God's covenant brings cycles of liberation ignored. The Kebra Nagast ties God's presence to Africa dismissed. Even the childhood miracles of Jesus preserved in Ethiopia were erased because they made him too untamed, too divine, too free from empire's categories. What happens when revelation is weaponized? Instead of freeing captives, it produces captives. Instead of lifting the poor, it sanctifies poverty as inevitable. Instead of challenging rulers, it crowns them. The gospel becomes less about the kingdom of God and more about the kingdom of men. And yet truth cannot be silenced forever. Even in Rome's dominance, whispers remained. Fragments of Enoch survived in Jewish memory. Hidden gospels surfaced in deserts and caves. Ethiopia's 88 books stood as a witness, a reminder that another story existed. The distortion was powerful, but it was not complete. Why would empire need to bend theology? Because real theology threatens empire. If Christ is Lord, Caesar is not. If justice is written into heaven, no earthly court can erase it. If every human bears God's image, slavery, patriarchy, and racism collapse. If the Son of Man was enthroned before creation, no ruler can claim eternal authority. This is why empire had to reshape the story. It could not tolerate a Bible that spoke too loudly of freedom. It could not leave uncut a canon that promised liberation. And so the distortion was not only theological, it was profoundly political. Theology became the mask empire wore to disguise its control. Doctrines were enforced not to bring clarity, but to demand conformity. Councils decided what to erase, not for holiness, but for hegemony. Does this mean faith itself is false? No. It means faith has always been contested. Between God's liberating truth and man's controlling distortions, the battle rages, and the witness of Ethiopia, the preservation of Enoch Jubilees, the Cabana Ghost, shows us that truth has ways of surviving even empire scissors. In the Epistle of Enoch, the prophet wrote, "Justice is not delayed, it is written in heaven." That remains true. No distortion, no mistranslation, no counsel can erase what God has decreed. The oppressed will be vindicated, the arrogant will be humbled, the image of God will shine in every face once more. And that leads us to the final message. For after visions of angels and giants, after calendars and histories, after warnings and judgments, the story of Enoch in Ethiopia confronts us with a question, not about ancient politics, but about us. What will we do with this truth? How will we walk with God in our time? That is where the journey now turns. Chapter 12, From Ethiopia to Eternity. Enoch's challenge for today. The story of Enoch is not just an ancient tale. It is not simply a relic preserved in dusty manuscripts or hidden in Ethiopian vaults. It is a message that thunders across millennia into our present, into your life and mine. For the battle, Enoch saw the rebellion of angels, the corruption of rulers, the judgment of God. That battle has not ended. It still rages. The war between angels and demons continues. The watchers may be bound, but their spirits live on in the systems of oppression, in the temptations of false knowledge, and the seductions of power and violence. The Nephilim may have drowned in the flood, but the arrogance of giants still walks among us in empires, corporations, and ideologies that devour the weak. What Enoch recorded was not only history, it was a map of spiritual warfare that still defines our world. The Book of Enoch does not invite us to merely speculate about the past. It calls us to live righteously in the present. It says, walk with God, live awake. Do not be seduced by the same forbidden knowledge that enslaved humanity before the flood. Do not fall under the same arrogance that doomed angels. Choose justice, humility, and holiness. This is the heart of Enoch's message. His life was not about mystical visions alone. It was about a way of walking step by step in communion with God until one day God himself said, "Come up higher." What would it mean for us to live like that in a world of distraction and corruption? To walk daily in intimacy with God in a culture of death, to live so close to heaven that death itself loses its grip. Enoch is not just a figure of the past. He is an invitation for the present. Ethiopia's preservation of his book is not an accident. It is a prophetic act. By keeping the words Rome erased, Ethiopia reminds us that Africa's prophetic voice cannot be silenced. The same land that sheltered the Holy Family when they fled from Herod is the land that preserved Enoch when empire tried to erase him. This is no coincidence. It is a testimony that God's plan is larger than Europe, larger than Rome, larger than empire. Africa has always been a guardian of the truth. For the African diaspora, this is a powerful reminder. Your heritage is not marginal. Your story is not forgotten. Your place in God's plan is not erased. Ethiopia's canon shouts across time the prophetic legacy of Africa is written into Scripture itself. And for all of us, the Book of Enoch stands as a warning. It declares that no empire, no council, no distortion can ultimately silence the truth. Justice delayed is not justice denied. The judge is coming, and his court cannot be bribed. For the righteous, that is hope. For the arrogant, it is terror. Enoch's epistle still rings justice is not delayed. It is written in heaven. Think of what that means. Every act of kindness, every hidden sacrifice, every prayer whispered in the dark, it is written. And every act of violence, every abuse of power, every betrayal of justice, it is written. Nothing is forgotten. Nothing is erased. This is the promise and the challenge. You are not forgotten. You are written in heaven. Your life has meaning beyond what the world sees. And like Enoch, you are invited to walk with God. Not someday, not in theory, but now. It means that faith is not passive. It is a journey. It is choosing to resist corruption even when it costs. It is choosing to stand with the oppressed even when the powerful sneer. It is choosing to see your days not as random, but as written in heaven's calendar. If one man in a corrupt world before the flood could walk so closely with God that he transcended death, then what excuse do we have? What will be written of us? Will our lives echo with compromise or with courage? Will our story end in dust or in glory? The Book of Enoch is not just ancient prophecy. It is a mirror. It shows us what is possible when a human being walks with God, and it challenges us. Will we be like the watchers chasing power and corruption? Or will we be like Enoch, living in such intimacy with heaven that we are carried beyond the grasp of death? The choice is ours, and the invitation still stands. Walk with God, live awake, be righteous, be faithful, be ready. For the war is not over, the judge is coming, and the Lamb is on his throne. And so I leave you with this: you are not forgotten, you are written in heaven.